Hi! How's it going? Right, I just thought I'd stop at car sales quickly. I just wanted to report, out of 100 taxis, all that's actually left off the road at the moment is all this lot. There is 2, 4, so about 20 cars off the road. Not bad going, and I think another 7 are going back on the road next week. So hopefully we'll all be back to normal again, where we'll only have sort of like 3 or 4 spares. So it looks like things are returning to normal finally. Thank bloody God. Yeah. Anyway, the reason I popped up here, I'm just going to go and say hello to Monica because we missed her on the last video. We just didn't have time to get up here. And also, I just want to congratulate her on something. I'll tell you when I get in the office. I'll tell you what, there's not many bloody cars up here. I thought there was more than this. Mind you, I must say, they've sold quite a few cars lately. Look at this Audi TT convertible. That's a hairdresser's car. That's a woman's car. Oh, I'm sure, yeah, I've seen that one before, the Audi A4 convertible. Yeah. 2995. Yeah. Right. Let's go and see the saleswoman. See what she's got to say before I start work. Oh, I've got a lovely job lined up today. Another taxi. Hello, Miss Monica.
How are you?
I'm okay. I just thought I'd pop in here and say hello.
Are you already recording?
Well, I'm already recording. And I'll tell you something, the flipping... Let me just adjust the exposure. There.
How are you?
I'm fine. Actually, let me shut the door.
How's the world of YouTube?
The world of YouTube's going great. Look, listen. There's a caramel macchiato and some, they were the cheap Tesco biscuits. I couldn't afford the £3 for the more expensive ones.
Thank you very much. Everything counts.
But I wanted to say, I think congratulations are in order for you.
Why?
On your promotion.
What?
You don't know that?
No.
You should do.
Why?
You are now officially, haven't you seen yourself? Okay everybody, listen up. If you go to Steve's car sales website,
Oh my God.
you will see Miss Monica there. She is now sales executive. Aren't you?
It's not a promotion, that's a demotion.
Demotion. You're a multitasker. You do the wages, you do this, that and the third. You sell cars now. In fact, there isn't much you actually don't do. The only
Taxi
thing-
driving and mechanics.
Yeah, well, you don't want to get involved in that. Well, mind you, I should think a lot of people on YouTube would like to see you in a pair of ovals fixing cars. I'll tell you something, I've had a promotion as well.
Did you?
Yep,
What?
I'm in charge of all jackpots in this company.
Okay.
You don't know what a jackpot is? That means a car where anything can go wrong or anything is wrong.
Okay.
It's my problem.
Yeah,
just
that's
like
true.
the one I've got lined up this morning,
Mm.
I've got this lovely taxi, broke down. From what I hear, the driver was, no, not the driver, the engine in the car was screaming to the driver to shut up, to stop the car, but the dumbass driver didn't hear it. Oh.
Steve's car sales.
While she's on the phone, she picked the phone up within 3 rings.
No worries,
This is our works van. This is what we do some breakdowns in. It pulls a trailer. Nice Vivaro, that is. Oh, you're off the phone, Miss?
Yep.
Yeah, I've got a right lovely job ahead of me today. That's what I thought I'd come in here first and say hi, cheer myself up before I go down there.
So you've got the engine on there. Lovely.
Anyway, I suppose I better go. I thought I'd come in here anyway so you can say hello to YouTube land.
Hello.
Well, Miss Monica, have a lovely day.
And you, take care.
We'll see you in the next video. Bye. How's it going, guys? Another day, another jackpot. This Ford Potato behind me is another one got stretched in on the back of a flatbed truck. I have no idea what was wrong with it, no story, the driver wasn't with the car. But just before we plugged the scanner in to read the bloody codes, I thought I'd crank the engine over, and there was a distinct lack of compression. So I thought, I knew exactly what had gone wrong. Either the cam belt had snapped, stripped its teeth, or the chain had snapped. But the first thing I'd done, because I can't check the cam belt easily on these, I pulled the oil filler cap off. By the way, this has done 259,000 miles, so I kind of guessed the chain would be the big one. Pulled the oil filler cap off. Yep, sure enough, the chain's broke. Shut up! Bloody MOT testers are noisy git. Anyway, what I was going to say is, I don't understand how some of these drivers can drive. I know diesels are noisy, but how some of these drivers can drive around, because this engine, if the bloody tensioner has actually broke up, which is making the timing chain as noisy as hell and making the engine as loud as hell, and these drivers can't even hear it. I reckon some of these drivers should pass a driving test just to be able to have a little bit of maintenance or a little bit of knowledge on the car they're driving, but some of them don't have no knowledge or any sense whatsoever. Anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to show you how to strip it all down the works. I've done that all before. I do have an engine in the shed, by the way, that I will strip down and show how the chain well, the timing chain gets replaced and everything, and I'll sort that all out later. It's the same as a Mark IV basically, but a bit more involved. But I'm going to show you the damage on this because I've just noticed this. This is a new one to me. It's the same old story. The timing chain tensioner has broke up. The little nylon guides have gone, but there's a bit more damage on this one than meets the eye. And what's worrying me is, because this idiot was driving this around, and it's a lack of oil pressure due to that tensioner, I'm going to fit a new chain, a new timing belt, this, that and the third, and I don't even know if the big end bearings have been damaged in this. So I could get all this done, like the one I'd done a few weeks back, and find out the engine's screwed anyway. But anyway, take a look at this. I'm having to use my phone on this because actually the video on the phones aren't too bad. Anyway, look, what we've got, the timing chain, the actual cam belt itself was okay, no problem at all. It's just the chain that's gone. If I lift that out of the way, oh, I've actually, look at that. I have actually unbolted this entire timing cover, but I haven't actually broke it free yet. There is bits of metal in here all over the bloody place. But what I want to, actually, let me get this tensioner out. You see that tensioner? There should be a nylon guide there, top and bottom, but there isn't, it's gone. So no doubt various bits and pieces of this have fallen into the sump. There is a strainer on the oil pickup. In actual fact, the entire internals of the tensioner are completely gone. And I'm going to show you in a minute the actual, well, I can show you here. When that nylon guide is broken away and the chain is just running across this, I don't know if you can see that tiny little hole there, just there. I'll try and show that better later. But the oil will squirt out of that hole because there's an oil feed that goes into this tensioner, and the oil will come out here where the guide should be, and it's like the oil is just spraying all over the place, and of course the engine is losing oil pressure, plus the chain is running across this, slapping across this metal casing, and that's what's breaking it. Anyway, get that out of the way. Where are we? Oh, there's part of the tensioner down there. It's still there, hasn't fallen into the sump. So I'll fish that out in a minute. But yeah, what I want to show, my hands are getting really shitty now. I don't know if you can see it down there. I'll get the camshaft out anyway. But just there, there's a broken tooth. There's a broken tooth on the cog, on the exhaust camshaft, which renders that camshaft useless. And God only knows how much a new camshaft is from Ford. I should think they're probably about the best part of £500 per camshaft. Luckily I've got some spare camshafts from previous engines. I tend to strip them down and keep all the bits. Anyway, I'm going to break this cover free and get these camshafts out, and then try and fish all the bits out that are down there. So now all I have to do is separate this casing, which is sometimes easier said than done. This was an easy one. I've had some in the past that have been really tight and they've gone with a bang. That one's come out really easy. So that should come off and leave the camshafts in place. Yep. I will say though, all these camshaft journals, every single one of them, there's absolutely next to nothing in the way of scoring on them. So I'm kind of hoping that the engine's going to live and be okay. But I know for a fact it's probably bust all of the rockers. But once again, we've had a few of these engines we've replaced, and all the old engines we get, we take all the rockers out. So I mean, you're talking probably about £500 for a set of rockers. Well, maybe 350 to 500, something like that. Anyway, once you add the gaskets and everything else you need, but it's a lot of money. So it pays to sort of like strip these engines when you do get dud ones. Anyway, I'll get these camshafts out of the way. Right, let me just have a quick look at these. They look okay. That's a good thing actually. What about these end ones? These are the ones that are furthest away from the oil pump. They look good. That's good news. That's going to, because if these were badly scored up, we could have a problem. But they look okay, so can't complain too much. Anyway, what I was going to do, I want to see how many of the actual lifters are broken. Because with the chain broken, these engines are designed to break these lifters right in the middle and not bend any valves. And I've never ever had a bent valve on one of these engines. So that's one lifter, which I can't see nothing wrong with it at the moment. What I'll do is I'll get them all out and we'll see how many are actually bust. I've pointed this out many times before. These engines, although they're an interference fit, and if the cam belt or the chain breaks, they do damage, like they'll break the rockers, but the rockers are designed to break in the middle, okay? So the valves are not supposed to bend. And I have never ever had a bent valve on one of these engines. A couple of years ago when we had one of these cam belts go, the car was actually travelling down the motorway, and it snapped all 16 of them rockers clean in half. But didn't bend a single valve. And this engine here, I've had a look at the valves anyway, just to make sure, because you never know, do you? And all the valves look okay. I mean, I can't tell for sure just by looking at them, but they all look straight, if you know what I mean. They all look the same. So I'm guessing that everything is okay up here. So I'm just going to clean all this lot up. Okay, everybody, I've removed all 16 of these valve rockers. And I put them all in a nice line, just so I can do a nice little focus pull, like that. That's camera pornographic. Let's do that again. See, that's my Sigma 18 to 35 lens, f2 aperture, lots of light. Anyway, what I wanted to say is, out of all 16 of these, there's only one that's even slightly suspect. I expected to see all of them snapped clean off in the middle here, as they're supposed to. And there's not one that's even damaged. I'm going to show you this one that's a little bit suspect. Right, there is a hairline crack just there. Now the compressor's cutting. I don't even know if this is one has hit a valve and that has done that little line there, or whether that was part of the manufacturing process. But this one is the only one with anything that even looks like it might be slightly damaged. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace this one and the other 15 of these rockers can all go back in the engine. That rocker that had the little line in it, I'm just using my phone on this to magnify in, and that is definitely a crack, 100%. Yeah, so that is the only one that's come into contact that I can see and cracked it. So we've been extremely lucky. We now have 15 rockers which we've gone over meticulously. 3 people have looked at these now, so I'll be blaming them if I put it back together and it's not right. Is that okay with you? Is that okay with you? There's just one other thing we've just been noticing here. If you see these rockers, this part here that goes on top of the valve, where the valve, it rocks on the valve, you can see sort of like, well, yeah, that one's okay, it looks all right. But if we go to the next one, compare it to this next one.
The shoulders as well, look.
Yeah, look how badly that one's worn. And look at that middle bit. That'll be making the engine rattle. So this one is actually knackered. So we're going to change this one as well. And there's like the next one, that one's not too bad. This one here, that's quite worn in the middle there. So all these ones that are like quite badly worn here, we're going to replace.
Them two are excessively worn.
Yeah. Unless you're looking carefully, it's quite easy to miss something like this. I mean, sure, it would still run all right, but I reckon this will be adding to sort of like a noisy engine because of all this extra play. And I'm not sure the actual valve lifters would make up for all this. But anyway, so we're going to change all them to good ones, and that one. And so they're all looking like this. Anyway, look at the state of that sprocket. And I'll tell you now, the chain did not do that. I've actually found out what done it. On this exhaust camshaft, there was this lying next to it. And that piece of metal should be straight. And believe it or not, that is part of the timing chain tensioner, which is completely screwed and smashed to pieces. But I reckon that bit there has got caught up in that cog, and that's what's bent it and actually snapped that cog. So, what we're going to do is swap this camshaft out for one I've got, because like I said earlier, we've actually got quite a few of these camshafts kicking around from other engines we've had that have been destroyed in one way or another. That's why it's always good to strip all the old parts. Anyway, look at the state of this tensioner. That there, the actual plunger that goes in here, that was actually sitting in the cylinder head. It hadn't fallen into the sump, luckily. The spring is completely screwed. It's all bust to pieces. That completely come apart. The guides are completely gone. That piece of metal is in the middle of the bottom guide that runs here. So that got caught up in the chain. So I fished all these bits and pieces out of the top of the head and cleaned it all up. But like I was saying earlier, these tensioners, the oil from the cylinder head goes through that little hole in the middle and actually feeds an oil feed to this top guide, and obviously inside here as well to the bottom guide. But when the top guide's gone, just here, it's hard to see, really hard to see, but there's a tiny little hole, and the oil will literally squirt out of here and it goes everywhere. And of course you're losing oil pressure in the engine when that top guide's gone, and that's a big problem. Anyway, nice chain. I'm sure these chains, they're the best part of £100. Mind you, there ain't no fixing this one. That's completely at it. Well, I am absolutely amazed we've only got one broken valve rocker. I'm getting the feeling that engine must have been like ticking over at the time that went, because if that had been going down the motorway, I'm sure that would have bust them all. So that saved a heck of a lot of money, but oh my God, I've just noticed something which could have spelt disaster. I don't think it would have been a disaster for me because I would have noticed it anyway. But one piece of advice here, whenever you have like, I don't know, a new component, say you've got the old part and you've got the new part, always check them meticulously, because this old camshaft with the bust, there we go, with the bust tooth on the sprocket, I'll show you this properly in a minute, but if this tooth had not have been bust, I would have just looked at this camshaft and thought, yeah, looks good, and I would have put this back in. I would have noticed a bigger problem, but if somebody wasn't as versed on these engines as I am, you might have just put this back in with the other camshaft and the chain and put all the links on the marks and timed it all up and got it all back together, and then found there would have been a huge problem, like the engine either wouldn't start or it would start and it would run like an absolute piece of crap. Let me just show you the bigger problem with this camshaft that I've just noticed. Right, so these are both exhaust camshafts. This one here is the one that's come out of the car. This is the one with the broken tooth that's right there. This other camshaft is one that I'm going to fit in the car. And I just put the two camshafts together, as you do, just to compare them. And I know, flipping heck, I noticed, look at the timing marks, them little lines there. They're both sitting at 12 o'clock position. But now, look at where the pulleys bolt on, where the Woodruff key goes on the pulley. Well, there is a little keyway on the pulley which will slot into there. They're at two totally different angles. That says to me that this actual sprocket, when it got, just focus the camera, when this part of the tensioner got jammed up in this tooth, I reckon it must have moved, actually spun this cog on the camshaft. And it just makes me think that if this tooth wasn't missing and this camshaft was put back in the engine, you might not have noticed that. It would have been easily overlooked, and the timing would have been absolutely, well, the camshaft would have been miles out. So I can show you another reason. Look at the back of the camshaft. See, this is our new camshaft with the sprocket at the front with a timing mark at 12 o'clock. The actual dog drive at the back of the camshaft should be sitting like vertical. But this camshaft, which is our dud one, which come out of the car, it's it's completely sitting off angle. That should be sitting at 12 o'clock. However, if part of that tensioner had not got caught up in that camshaft sprocket and snapped that tooth, there's a high chance that that cog would have not spun on the camshaft anyway, and the camshaft could well have been perfectly fine. I guess we will never know. That's why it always pays just to take that little bit of time and check everything properly, because if you don't, you can end up in a whole world of shit. Anyway, this Frankenstein engine I'm building now, because it's parts out of different engines, you see, I'm using to make one good engine. I'm going to put the chain on these camshafts, pop it back in, get it all back together and hope it goes. There, that's our link lined up with our little line. They're both lined up now. So all we've got to do is pop our tensioner in the middle, like so. And now we can pop this back in the car. By the way, I just want to point out here, our tensioner is in the fully retracted position. And once that's back and all bolted in, and the camshaft carry is bolted down, then we'll twist this and it will release the tensioner under the spring pressure. So I'll slot that back in there, and that's ready to go back in the car now. Before I stick them camshafts back in, I'm just going to put some oil in all these journals and a bit over the rockers as well. Just sort of like to help it on the initial start up before the oil pressure gets up. Ta-da! There we go. And that will just lay down in there. Splendid. Just before I pop this top cover on, I will put plenty of oil across this chain, and I'm also going to oil up all the cam lobes and the actual cam journals as well. Also, there's a piece on all the outside of this cylinder head, it's pretty much a face fit, but if you clean it all up, I'm going to put a very, very thin smear of silicone sealant all the way around. You haven't got to put much on, just very, very thin. And also in the middle where the injectors sit, there is a gasket which you're going to need, which will sit there like that. And once you put the top casing on, you can put a couple of bolts through to hold it into place until everything's bolted down properly. So anyway, I'm going to get this top cover bolted down, right? And then we'll see how we're doing. I just want to point one thing out here. There's a lot of 8mm bolts holding this camshaft cover down. I've noticed in the past that if you were to bolt all this down properly, you may not be able to fit the brake vacuum pump and like the cog unit that the high pressure pump bolts onto, because they don't quite line up in the holes again. So what I found is best to do is to bolt this down very, very loosely and then fit these pumps in first, so then they're nicely located in their holes where they're supposed to be. Then bolt all these down, then bolt these up afterwards. And also another thing, just before I whack all these 8mm bolts down, the gasket that sits in between the camshaft cover, if you use some injector bolts to put through there, you can screw them in and that will hold the gasket in place so it doesn't sort of like move out of place, or you could find yourself not being able to fit the injectors in afterwards. Anyway, right, I'm going to get this all bolted down now. Just in case you're wondering, because it's a bit tight down here getting that camshaft oil seal in, if you were to sort of like tap it in very slightly, then you get a big socket on it. You can use a pry bar up against the casing of the ECU and on the socket and just press the socket in and it will press the seal in. You'd have to sort of like work it from side to side, but generally speaking it does the job pretty well. That's got in quite squarely. Things are looking pretty good. The timing cover, camshaft cover, is all bolted down, all 30 goddamn how many bloody screws there are. The chain, that little black thing just there, you kind of twist it 90 degrees and that releases the chain tensioner, so that's been released. Chain's all nice and tight, all lined up properly. Our brake vacuum pump and the unit the high pressure pump bolts onto is all bolted on with new gaskets, by the way. And down here, like I've just shown, I've put a new camshaft oil seal in there. This car is about 40,000 miles off its cam belt change anyway, so I'm going to stick a new water pump on, put a brand new cam belt kit on it, and then I'm going to spin the engine over. So that's it for today. That's end of part one. I know I've been through all this before. I don't know how many times I'm sick and tired of talking about these bloody engines, but I don't know, I still find them kind of interesting when things go wrong. I like to see the destruction they do and share it with you lot. Maybe you like that sort of thing, I don't know. But anyway, it's late Friday afternoon, I'm never going to get it finished today. So I will resume Monday, just pottering about, putting a few more bits back together, and when it comes time to actually fire it up, I will have the camera rolling so we can see whether it actually works, and we will also know whether the engine is bollocks, because I don't know how the bottom end of this engine is. I guess we'll find out Monday or Tuesday as soon as I get back on this. But I thought I'd bung this one out for the weekend anyway, just to get something out there. You know how it is. It's hard finding the time to actually do the little movie bits. Anyway, that's it for today. So, till next week, see ya!